All right, guys. Howdy. I just recorded a video for my 320 language and thought class that took about 9 minutes. But I was going through two chapters, so it took a little longer than I think this one will take. I think this will go pretty quick, actually. But as we discussed before, I won't be around tomorrow. I'll be on a plane in the morning, and so I'm just putting this together before I leave the office today on Tuesday. And this will be your in lieu of class assignment, essentially, is do the readings, watch the video, and I also want to be getting your next assignment up pretty quickly here. I don't think I'm going to be able to get to that today. Probably on the plane tomorrow. Anyway, real soon. And I'm thinking about that one, getting close. So just a quickie little video on some selections from Carlo Petrini. The founder of the Slow Food International Movement in Italy. He wrote this great book, The Case for Taste, and a bunch of other stuff. It's a very readable, very accessible book, and I wanted to just get a little taste of this taste book before we move into our next set of readings, where we're going to be looking at food as like political battleground, essentially, right? So we've been talking about like sort of our experience with the food system and all the ways that it's kind of engineered to make us want it as much as we can, really, and the way that the game sort of seems rigged against us. And so now we're turning into thinking about ways that we can kind of resist, challenge, oppose, swerve through food, right? And so the obvious candidate here is the slow food movement, which, as he mentions, goes back to like 1989. Oh, November 9th. So almost to the day. What is that? 30 years to the day? Gosh, I didn't realize that. That's cool. All right. So, the slow food movement began in Italy, and you've got two little pieces here. One is the Slow Food Manifesto, which is very brief, as manifestos should be. And then we have just a section from the end of, I think, the first section of the book on McDonald's versus slow food. Had a hard time trying to figure out what to excerpt. Some of the other pieces were really good, but they kind of went in different, deeper dive directions. This one's probably the best, kind of just as a package, right? So first of all, the official Slow Food Manifesto. All right, let's go broad here. Let's kind of just start big. What's the takeaway? This is about a lifestyle, right? This is a kind of it's not just a lifestyle. It's a value system. It's a kind of a orientational value system for an entire culture, and it's meant to resist, oppose, challenge this whole industrial processed fast food system, right? So it's a way of it's a program for a way of living. It's a program for a way of like organizing social landscapes. It's a program for organizing an economy, and it's really sort of oriented around these kind of specific values. And so we can see this as a kind of clash of value systems here, right? So the one that is represented by the modern industrial agricultural food system, right? And then the other one is this slow food alternative. And it's not super challenging. You've probably heard stuff along these lines before, but here is sort of the like the original ideas stated boldly. So the Slow Food Manifesto here, cover that one first. It's great. I think it's awesome. It's just sort of like a call to arms. It's very sharp, very pointed, very to the point, very abrupt, and it's kind of like a call to arms, right? So our century which began and has developed under the insignia of industrial civilization, first invented the machine and then took it as its life model. Basically, we've organized everything around machines, and machine logic and machine values are our values increasingly. These are values of efficiency, values of convenience, greater outputs for lesser inputs, getting more for less, quicker, 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 cheaper, cheaper, cheaper. We've talked about some of this stuff, right? We are enslaved by speed and have all succumbed to the same insidious virus fast life. Getting more for less, getting it quicker, getting it now, shortening the distance between me and the thing I need, right? And so organizing entire economies, restaurants, food systems, grocery stores around these values. And lo and behold, we have lives that are just sort of lived out in terms of quick jolts of consumption, right? But the slow food thing is all about kind of slowing down, thinking about intentionality, authenticity, thinking about social relations, thinking about aesthetics, pleasure, joy, friendship, these kinds of things, right? So it's a rejection of the kind of the total worldview that a place like McDonald's or Burger King or Taco Bell, these things, what they represent, right? So they say a firm defense of quiet material pleasure. Quiet material pleasure is the only way to oppose the universal folly of the fast life. Suitable doses. This isn't hedonism. This isn't about just like gorging yourself. Suitable doses of guaranteed sensual pleasure and slow, long-lasting enjoyment preserve us from the contagion of the multitude who mistake frenzy for efficiency. I love the language here. Our defense should begin at the table with slow food. Let us rediscover the flavors. Rediscover, right? This business of like, McDonald's hamburger being tasty is sort of like saying, I don't know, a hit of opium is true joy. It's like a really perverted version of the real thing. Let's see. So regional flavors, right? Local, nearby, fresh, seasonal. This is the maximum. This is the peak of what we are able to create, at least in food and culture and so on. So this is what real culture is all about, developing taste rather than demeaning it. And what better way to set about this than an international exchange of experiences, knowledge, and projects. So they're all about, as an organization, they're all about preserving local traditions, local products. They have all kinds of certification things and structures created to archive, canonize, like not lose key local ingredients. Remember the seed thing that we talked about, the seed bank? It's really along those lines, right? Preserving cherished local traditions. All right, so McDonald's versus fast versus slow food. He notes early on that they're not about like taking down. They're not like their sort of political agenda is not like protesting in Wall Street or trying to like get out front of McDonald's and go away. Instead, it's more about encouraging the enjoyment of the things that are still here, that are local, that are authentic and unique. So it's more about pushing that stuff out and shining the lights on the good rather than trying to like take down the bad, right? They call McDonald's the leading symbol of the new American imperialism. This is the bottom of that first page, 26. So McDonald's is like a symbol of a whole kind of global economic system, right? And it's all about churning out the same thing for the cheapest possible cost, right? The most consistent, predictable product. I'm just finishing up writing this paper for the conference on Trump, and I discovered that he has stated that one of the reasons why he enjoys fast food so much is because he calls it cleanly. And I think what he really means is predictable, right? And it's like no matter where you go, you're supposed to be able to get the same fries, the same burger, and it's never any guesswork. It's always just the same thing. Slow food wants to reject that idea, wants to reject this idea of sort of mechanically reproduced sameness, right? So talks about the kind of the distinction between the city and the country. McDonald's is like going after the cities, and they're kind of trying to preserve the country and bring the country back into the city and sort of resist there. And these osterias, if you've ever been to Italy, they have different kind of categories of restaurants. The osterias, it's just it's a very casual place. I guess it was mostly originally about like coming in for a glass of wine, and they used to have little like cheese and so on and so on. But you can find some of like the local favorites. It's like a kind of a bar, just casual, but like super particular to the place, right? And very precious in that way. So on page 28, that first full paragraph, others may take the fight to the streets. Slow food has a different idea: to rescue eating establishments, dishes, and products from this flood of standardization. Standardization is just about kind of leaching all of the really, true flavor and distinctiveness out of food, and just kind of, I think of it as like digital printing. It's like digital copying, just like the same experience, the same thing over and over again. Same everywhere. Talking about the quality of, so every so often these big chains will brag about like, oh, but if you go to this local one, they'll have things that are local. There's even some research language calls this localization, right? So like if you go to KFC in China, or Pizza Hut was a big one. Pizza Hut in China is really interesting because it's been highly localized in the sense that much of the menu is actually, we wouldn't recognize it. They have like seafood pizzas, and you can get corn and all kinds of weird things in Pizza Hut that you won't get here. So the idea is like, it's not just the same. It's been localized. So, but he's taking issue with that. Even those localized efforts they're still drawing on these massive distribution chains and commodified products and so on. So it's not great. He invokes Taylorism, 32. Have you ever heard of the Taylor model? Taylorism is the kind of the spirit and the original planning behind the assembly model, right? Right. So it's like, how do you churn out the same quality product repeatedly at a high level of efficiency? That's Taylorism. I like this move too here. This is kind of like one of the last main ideas. But on the bottom of 32, he says, it's not just about slow versus fast. I mean, generally speaking, fast food is terrible and slow food is preferable. But he says, you've probably also been to a banquet before that was really like excruciatingly slow. It didn't mean it was good. It was just painfully slow. And it's not like all fast food is terrible. Go to Mexico, get some tacos. Go to Mexico City, get some tacos on the street. You'll have them within a matter of seconds. They'll be some of the best food you've ever had. They'll be super cheap, right? So it's not like everything that's fast is terrible and everything that's slow is great. You need to kind of make that fine distinction. But by and large, this is the way he's organizing it. Slow values are better than fast values, right? Let's see. So the top of 33, I got all kinds of stars. It says, so it's not just a question of opposing slow to fast, but rather of highlighting more important dichotomies, like carefulness and carelessness, or attentiveness and haste. These are good. Attentiveness to the selection of ingredients and the sequence of flavors, to how the food is prepared and the sensory stimuli it gives as it is accustomed to consume, to the way it is presented in the company with whom we share it. Nice. There are endless degrees of attentiveness. Fast food, is any attention being paid to the actual food? It's more like it's a kind of a quick eating experience that we've all kind of grown accustomed to. But, his argument is like, this is the kind of the tip of the iceberg of so many other problems in terms of our culture, our economy, and so on. So that's the issue. And, it ends off by talking about, we can't just hope and assume that as our children grow up, they'll develop a more mature taste. They'll grow out of the hamburger, the fast food hamburgers and French fries and so on. His whole point is like, that stuff gets kind of like wired in from a younger age. And so we got to try to like reach the younger generation. Hopefully you're not the younger generation, but you're still pretty young. And so hopefully we're trying to reach you a little bit in terms of thinking about the quality of your lifestyle. Cooking versus just having stuff delivered or going to the drive-through. I mean, we're all guilty of doing this from time to time. We do live fast, busy lives, but to the extent that we can kind of get away from that, step away from it, cook our own food, grow our own food, like Jeremy. Is that the right class? Yes, soil. Jeremy grows his own soil, right? So to the extent that we can do this more ourselves, with each other, with loved ones, people we care about. I mean, for me, like that's the joy of life. Sitting around tables together after a day spent in the kitchen. I'm already thinking about Thanksgiving and what I'm going to do. So that's the spirit of the piece here. Nothing too earth shattering in terms of concepts or whatever. Just a nice, easy read that's also pretty provocative and engaging. So hopefully you enjoyed it. And 15 minutes. Okay, cool. So that's about it for now. I will be heading home in a bit, and I will be seeing you guys on Monday, where I think we're actually reading one of my pieces. So we will continue this conversation about food, culture, politics, tables, values, what can we do, and on we go. So have great weeks and weekends, and I'll be seeing you in a few days.